Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Ihsan.
And I'm Erick Mertz.
And it is November 30th, 2022, as we record this. Our main topic is failure.
Oh, boy.
More specifically, failing in order to succeed. We don't have any new patrons this week, but a big squeezy hug and thank you to our existing patrons for believing in us and in the podcast. You can go to patreon.com/Valerie Ihsan, IHSAN, for a gander at all the tiers and cool benefits. We had a comment last week for last week's episode 92. Mary says, very nice episode. I'm excited for both of you and your upcoming projects. She said, Valerie, I think the picture on your author website is fantastic. I definitely think that picture of you would entice people to pick up the book. I'm not sure which one she's talking about because I have a lot of pictures on the website, but thank you.
Take it though. Take it. Yeah. Thank you, Mary.
And then Eric, I have your first book. I like the cover and I look forward to reading it. So again, I don't know which book that is. Is that 0 or is that 1? But I don't know.
Thank you either way.
Right?
And I hope you enjoy it because I really loved writing it.
Okay, so the next announcement is a reminder of the Writer Craft Writing Retreat and Workshop. The tickets are live, priced at $900, but patrons get a discount to $825. Monthly payments are an option, and it's scheduled for next August 24th to the 27th. Tickets include all the lodging, all the gourmet meals, plus instruction and coaching and retreat time on the river in Marcola, Oregon. So you can go to valerieihsan.com/retreat for more information. Are you going to go to that?
Travel is a negotiation in this household. I'm crossing my fingers. I get August. There's a wedding next year. There's 2 trips next year, and I'm potentially a trip to Italy.
Oh, yay. Yeah, we have a trip to Turkey next year, because we need to see Ali's mom as often as possible. And there might be a little detour to Greece for like 3 days also. That would be really nice.
Why wouldn't you?
It's right there. It's one of the islands
right there
that you can ferry over to. And so that might be happening. And Ali and I had discussed not doing any reunions and stuff next year, as we have several, not events, but like regular things that happen, on a yearly base with friends and family. And we talked about, maybe not doing that in 2023, just to save money and pay off debt and stuff like that. But, and so, yes, there's a reunion in October that I really would like to go to, but with all my editor pals. But yeah, that's probably not going to happen either. So I hear you.
My mom just went to France this year, and she traveled. It's her first time traveling abroad since my father passed away. She traveled with she works at a bookstore. It was one of her bookstore pals, and she kept hinting throughout the preparation and the and the aftermath, like, wow, I'd really love to go to Italy. I'd love to go to Italy with someone like I really knew better than just a bookstore friend and someone who's been to Italy. She keeps like nudging, like, hey, son, let's do this. So that's on the top of my brain. But
nice.
Yeah, we're talking about how to make travel work because we have like weddings and things. But I want to do this. I love that part of the state too.
Oh, Marcola.
Oh, anywhere in that.
Just on that highway.
Lush.
Yeah.
Oh man, so beautiful.
So, Eric, before we hit record, I reminded you that next week, December 7th,
a day that will live in infamy. Pearl Harbor Day.
You joined the podcast. So next week will be your 1-year anniversary on the podcast. And I was super excited to notice that yesterday. And I was looking through my planner and I just got all warm and fuzzy. And
I was reminded
I'll
of getting
save the slobbering for next week. But yeah, you were telling me
the cake will arrive. Hopefully the cake will arrive before the podcast so we can cut it on air. Yeah, I mean, I remember getting the text when you put this up. I was at a basketball game with a friend walking the concourse, and I stopped to read the text and he kept talking and kept walking. And so it was like a very memorable moment. And I think you kind of, I remember your text was like, well, here, let me pitch this to you. And I thought like, you don't have to pitch it. I'm in. Like I want to do this with you. Let's go. So
Oh, it's super
yeah,
fun.
this was, I couldn't think of anyone I'd want to work with on something like this than you. So thank you
It's
for
so
having me.
fun. Yay. All right. Well, we'll talk more about that next week, December 7th.
Yes.
So I just finished reading Meredith Alone by Claire Alexander and The
Interesting.
Music of Bees by Eileen Garvin.
Two
So
books.
2 books. Yeah, I finished those.
You're awesome.
I have been reading a lot this year, and I think it's because, the stress of not being able to read all the books that I want to read as I work in the bookstore and see all these books that I want to buy, let alone read, made me set aside more time in my week to read. It was important to me. And so I set aside one night a week that I don't watch TV and I read instead. And that goes, sometimes there's more nights in there that I choose that instead of TV. I can't read at night before I go to bed anymore because I just fall asleep. So it has to be like early evening that I'm reading. And of course, I read at lunchtime, but my breaks are usually small, or like yesterday, I just worked through lunch, so I didn't read.
Right.
So yeah, I'm
I
finding
miss
that I'm reading a lot more than I used to and getting through books. I didn't ever think if I could read a book a month before, several years ago, that was pretty standard. Maybe one more, but
right.
yeah, one or two a week.
I miss the
That's
bus. I
kind of
used to,
cool.
when I lived in Seattle, I used to commute to work by bus. That was like an hour and 15 minutes of reading time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and working a standard job with those forced breaks. It's like, because I work through every lunch. I always put lunch on the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to do this when you're doing your thing. Like the next month when you're doing when you're in your author business and you're doing it. Some advice from me would be hold on to those lunch breaks, because once you start working through one, you're working through all of them. My wife has noticed. She said, like, you're not up here like hanging out and watching YouTube videos and walking the dog anymore for lunch, are you? And I've kind of like, I'm a little embarrassed about that I don't take a lunch break like I used to. So that's one of my work resolutions for next year.
Mm.
Spoiler alert: I am going to work. I am trying to get a lunch break back into my world. So
Nice. Yeah, I'm usually pretty great about allowing myself break times at home or stopping work in the afternoon, especially if I work through the lunch.
right,
and and I don't anticipate that changing much, but I'm on a couple of deadlines right now, so that's why I was.
yeah,
And of course, everything freaking takes so much longer than I think it is. So I'm gonna like roll into my little author update here. So I had on my list of things to do yesterday, there were quite a few, like 3, 4, 5, but they all seemed like smallish tasks. And even if each one took a whole hour, I thought, okay, I could reasonably get all this stuff done. Dude,
right.
I am so not in my, like, there's no reality in my stream of thinking these days. I don't know. One of them took like 4 hours. So yeah, I did not get my list done. So that was part of why I was working through the lunch, because when I'm on a deadline and things are taking 4 times longer at the minimum than I think they're going to. Yeah.
I've found
So
that happens a lot when I say like, oh, I've got 4 1 hour tasks on a Wednesday. I can get all those done in 6 hours, and then invariably the first one takes 2, and then the next one takes 2.5,
one
and
of
then
the
I'm
things
moving
I
things
had
down the
to
line.
redo, and so that slowed me down quite a bit. Arguably, when you repeat a task, it's faster because you've already done it. You already know what you're looking for, or you've already, has that muscle memory or something like that. But there's also that little bit of despair at like you already put an hour of work in and erased, so you have to start all over again. So that slows me down a little bit too. Like I have
Yeah.
I have the
Familiar.
cover picked out. There's just I was kind of I'm overthinking the subtitle font on the cover.
I saw that in Slack the other day.
So
I saw
yeah, I've
that.
been emailing back and forth with the designer. I totally am overthinking it, but it's 99% done. It's and I'm ready to approve the ebook cover. And there is one that I did tell the designer, like, all right, I'm leaning towards this one, but I'm just not in love with the font. And what I had done was go to Canva and put my subtitle in like 5 or 6 different fonts that I preferred, and just emailed that PDF over and was like, hey, would any of this I mean, I know she's the designer, so she'll be able to
Right.
say like, oh no, like those 2 fonts don't go together, or that looks stupid, or whatever. And so I trust her to do that. I just didn't like the font that it just looked too much like a typewriter, and I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the typewriter font is unfortunately like a writer default. So if you can get away from that typewritery font, I think
Right.
you're doing yourself a favor. But I don't think you can overthink those things, honestly. I think if you're going to look at that book cover, hopefully for the next 10 to 15 years as an author, if you have that little niggling doubt about an element of it, I don't think it's going to go away. I think you are better just to get it right now than and overthink it now than
Maybe, although the feedback I was getting from the community was that the subtitle font would not make or break the decision to purchase the book,
no,
so
no, I don't think
there's
that's,
that. So I
but
forecasted
it's
my
you.
remaining publishing tasks, and I am on target for the January release, even though it seems to be taking longer than I think. I'm starting to think about pricing and keywords. That's kind of what I'm focusing on right
That's
now,
your,
or forecasted for next week anyways. Yesterday I did the final proofread on the manuscript, and I finalized the formatting and vellum. And I'm going to send out the last batch of my postcards today. So if you still want a postcard and you haven't gotten one by next week, then, email me, writercraftpodcast@gmail.com, and let me know. I somehow forgot you, but I have a list of patrons, so I should have sent one to everyone. I had to go to the mail or to the post office to get postcard stamps. So that's why it took me a
oh
long
yeah.
time.
They're always so uniquely different than regular stamps too.
Right? But I don't know what they cost anymore. They used to be 1 penny, 1 cent stamps for the postcards, but now they just say forever on them, so they don't have to keep
Yeah,
redesigning
everything's a
them.
forever stamp.
So I don't know
They,
actually how
yeah,
much it cost.
yeah. Nobody knows what a stamp costs anymore. What am I reading? I finished Deserter this week, which I was starting to read last week,
Mm-hmm.
which is a Japanese horror graphic novel. Definitely wacko, just some crazy horror concepts. A couple of them like made me really self-conscious to have the book like out on my living room table. Like I didn't want my it was there was
You don't want anyone to know that you
I
read it.
well, I don't think I'm making any cultural generalities that no one that other people haven't, but there's just what is frightening to certain cultures is it's not universal, right?
Right.
And I think when you read Japanese horror or watch Japanese horror, it's a very different scare.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's like it's just a disturbing read. It's like some of the stories in this thing were like I had to put it down and just like just like got under my skin.
Mm-hmm.
When I got done with that, I picked up Mexican Gothic, and
Oh, have you got very far
yeah,
into it?
I'm just a couple of chapters in,
It's a little slow
which
start.
a little slow start, but it's got that Gothic novel start where it's like you're
Mm-hmm.
setting up this whole like what once was and what is, and this sort of that's the basis of like every Lovecraft story, every one of the, and it just I like immediately as soon as I got 2 paragraphs in felt like okay, I'm home. This is right.
Yay!
um
I'm so glad. I haven't read anything
it's
else
gonna
by
be
her. I have she doesn't, I heard her speak, and so she said that her stuff doesn't fall under, she doesn't write in one genre really. I
right.
mean, you can put it under like mainstream fiction, but they have like Mexican Gothic was clearly like a Gothic story, and then Velvet Was the Night
Right.
is a 70s noir, and yeah, so they are totally different, really.
Yeah.
But she likes to
Yeah.
write that way, so
It had a great feel. It just, I was immediately transported to a place in a,
she's
so
really
that was
good
nice.
at the ambiance and I can't wait for you to get to the castle. I don't think she calls it a
I'm
castle, but you know.
I'm gonna burn through this book too. Like I could just feel like it's just gonna be, it's a fun it's a fun read already. So,
Cool.
and then
And
author update. Boy, what am I doing? I'm rewriting a book. it's it's not the most romantic part of being an author, but I'm going through. So what I did was just a sort of a process layout briefly. Like I wrote the book as to be a novella. I was going to write a shorter book. I did like a real mythology dive and like, okay, what am I getting into? And I recognized that I couldn't, and what I wanted to reveal in my bigger story, that I couldn't write to reveal just what I wanted to reveal in a novella. I had to reveal more because it just didn't make sense. It would have felt like too thin. So I ended up taking like other concepts, which were going to go into other books, and then sort of put them into this. And so I've gone and sort of expanded the story, expanded the more like the outcomes of what happens in the story. And so I've basically gone through and what was a 15,000 word story, expanded it as I go. But what I what I really did was I once I realized I wanted to do this, I had to rewrite a whole new 20,000 word ending. So I did that. And so now what the book is, it's sort of like a Frankenstein book. You've got this fully fleshed out novel ending, and it's this, but the beginning is sort of thinner. So I've
mhm.
had to go back and like, and this is actually a really effective way for me to rewrite, because I'm looking at it like, oh, this is exactly where I wanted to land. This resolves in a really satisfying way. Now, how do I go back to this thinner beginning and foreshadow and build to this? And
Mm.
so what's going to be funny is I have writers group tonight, and they've read everything up to this point. Now they're going to read this fully fleshed out ending. And I can, in my comments, when I sent the submission, I said, listen, like this is a fuller version of what you've read. Just stick with me here. So I can just hear the comments like, wow, what did we miss in the beginning? Because this is went an entirely different direction, but
I'd like to have a
a good
podcast
direction.
episode where we talk about, or where you specifically, I'll interview you, talk about writing mystery and the
Mm.
process of like, you know, the red herrings and the clues and the foreshadowing and, you know, how do you craft that and what's obligatory and and I know you've got kind of a cross genre, so how does that affect it? And that would be really interesting. I like your
It has
SpongeBob
been
mug. Dude.
SpongeBob.
That's funny.
My son, he got me this when he was 3, I think, and I think all he knew that about me at 3 years old was that I liked SpongeBob. So he took my wife to the store and just said like, "That's for Dad." So
That's
I will.
funny.
This is my favorite mug, and it's like, look at the size of this thing. You can pretty much, synchronize swim in it if you wanted to. So it's a great morning mug. So yeah,
Nice.
mysteries, I'll put it like, I'll foreshadow that episode. Like it's part accident, and it's part intent. Because I would love to know anyone who could intentionally lay out all of those elements, because
Like
sometimes I
in
just
the
think,
plotting stage.
yeah, I think sometimes you just have to, sometimes I'll just write and say like, oh, this is clearly like a red herring. But I didn't mean it to be, but it's just, it,
Mhm.
you kind of stumble into it. And that, for me, that actually means more, like to me, like, okay, that means it's going to work more for me than if I plotted it.
And the
I
reader
like a
too.
happy accident. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then your process, you said just a minute ago, is that you go back and fill in and do the foreshadowing and stuff afterwards.
That's, I think, what I'm going to start doing. Right. I stumbled into this process, like the book changed shape and dimension. And so I ended up having to having to do that, but it's been so satisfying because I'm really like, this week I've taken one chapter, which was 3 scenes, and I've expanded it to 3 chapters and 8 scenes, but I'm keeping those existing scenes. I'm just adding things in
Right.
that, and that
Flesh it
is
out.
really, that fleshing it out part, which I've never really done before, this way. I think I'm gonna find a way to make this the process,
You
because
like it?
yeah, I really do.
Cool.
To be continued. We'll talk about that more.
Yeah.
Let's talk
Okay.
about failure.
Let's talk about failure. So I want to start by saying that
I like how you said that with a laugh too, by the way. That was great.
failure.
You
Let's
giggled.
talk about failure.
You said
So
it so
I
sweetly.
really truly believe that failure is necessary to a person's success.
Oh yeah.
And I totally believe that in my head and not in my heart. So I still struggle every day to believe that, because I tend to lean towards but is it really, do I have to fail? I bet if I try harder and I stay focused and I do my research and just get everything set, it's going to be great. And then the perfectionism starts getting in the way of starting. And what I really, really struggle to do, and it's kind of a mantra for me now, is to learn in public.
Oh yeah. That's a good way to.
That's what I'm trying to do, because I want to normalize failure for myself so I can stumble and do it in front of my audience and have it be okay. And, ultimately I would like to have the rapport with my audience where I can do that. Or I can start out by saying, hey, I've never done this before, but let me try it. It sounds fun. Let's do it together, and how that can be a more fun journey than being so anxious about having everything look perfect and ready and professional and then start a project, like a service maybe that you want to provide, or a course, like an online course, building an online course or something like that, or a webinar. Like I can just go in and learn in public and just give it a shot and see what happens. And that gets me started. What is that quote? Somebody brought it up to me just the other day. Something is the failure. There's what is the opposite of done?
The fail better quote?
Yeah, there's not fail better, but the idea behind it is that if you just keep worrying it and thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, then it's never going to get done. Whatever it is that you started out doing. I'll have to find the quote, put it in the show notes.
I've always liked the Beckett quote where, ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better. I've always felt like, I think you're hitting on something that, I've always wrestled with and come to enjoy, come to appreciate my relationship to failure. And that is, you can't plan your way to 100% success. Like you're not genuinely trying anything new if that's what you're doing. That's my belief. So I feel like you have to accept that even the most polished professional anything is the product of failure, whether or not that creator chooses to fail in public or fail in private. If we hold those luminary authors and marketers and professionals and podcasters and all those things as the standard, like they just were hatched that way, then that's an impossible standard to meet. I think it's just our choice and how we're going to. I've written the books that Mary had to choose from when she bought one. I've written 100 books, started and failed 97 times, and that's fine. Like I wouldn't be here without failing it. You just have to accept that. Now I can hide that and just never fess to that to readers or in public, but why would I? It humanizes you to fail, I think, and that's what people want to connect with as a human being, not like a polished professional.
That's true. Yeah.
Thing they want. We connect as
you
humans.
Want to see the blood?
Yeah,
Show me
I
the
think
blood.
that's perfectly. I think the things that we're that we want to avoid the failures on is, wow, I just plunked down $100 on an ad campaign that went nowhere. I could have done more research. There's things like that I kick myself on. I invested a bunch of time and money into something that I could have researched just a little bit and done better. Those things I kick myself on but on the crafty side, on the big business decision side, failure is part of it.
Perfect is the enemy of done. That was the quote.
There you go. Oh, I always say, I say a version of that. It's better is the enemy of good.
Better.
Like if you're always looking for something better, you're never going to find something that's good enough. It's when we're looking for a restaurant on date night, I'll tell my wife, it's like we're heading to one restaurant that we'll either want to try or we've been to, and she's looking for another one. And I'll say like, no, we're going to something good enough. There's nothing better than this right now. I think you can better yourself into paralysis if you're not careful.
Yeah. So you said better is the enemy of good, or the
that's yeah.
Okay.
I always my 8-year-old can recite that off the, like he'll probably shout it at some person on the playground today.
So you were talking about something I wanted to circle back on. And actually, I remember during our coaching session on this show, you were talking about learning Amazon ads, or like not wanting to look bad or feel look bad because you're in your office by yourself, but like you don't want to spend time doing something that you're bad at because it feels better to do something that you're good at. So
always right.
We talked about playing in the sandbox and like blocking out time to just play around, and that was a mindset shift for some folks to be able to dip your toes into new things and be bad at them and fail at them, because then it's not a matter of, it's kind of like writing a rough draft. Like it's not supposed to be good. It's just, it's the crappy first draft. So play in the sandbox. I liked that. I wondered how you did with that, playing the sandbox. Did you have a positive outcome or experience with that?
Yeah, on and off. I've where I have struggled, and I don't mind saying, is like choosing. There's a number of things that I need a sandbox for, right? It's generally just marketing and advertising and those kind of things. It's the side of things that I have a lot of like desire to make work. Like I've probably plotted like 50 social media campaigns that I've never started. I've decided like where I have a hard time is where do I start? Like which one of these things to put in the priority? That's usually where I get paralyzed, is like I've got a newsletter that needs work. I've got a social media presence that needs work. And I've got an overall advertising presence that needs work. Which one do I focus on? And then I'll just like start writing a story again, because I can't decide which one of those things to do. How I've chosen to deal with this is to say like, which one of those things is the most important? Let's start with that one. And I started with the newsletter. So I am currently I'm reading 5 or 6 author newsletters a day. Some really great ones. I'm making a long list. I'm sort of figuring out how to do that same thing. I'm working with a consultant on how to do the newsletter. And this all sounds like I'm kind of inoculating myself from failure, but I'm just giving myself a better place to start.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. And once I get this newsletter plan, I told that I really want to just start of the year be in a different newsletter place and be actively doing it, set it and forget it. I'll move on to the ads, partly because ads get really expensive this time of year and I'm not going to fool around with ads when they're cost 3 times as much. But I'm also looking at a lot of the not Facebook pages, but Amazon pages for books that I am the also bots, and just seeing how things better market copy. Wow, I've got a list of different, how to write better book descriptions. And so, yeah, I think I have to find that balance between, because I'm an information gatherer, I have to be a better information executor to make that, to really fulfill that sandbox promise, to really dive into it. But yeah, so it in increments, I am doing that, because again, it's easier to write. it's easier to sit here and just come up with another story.
As a number one input strength, the basement for that is like a constant inputting of data, research, getting lost in there, bringing in new classes, reading more stuff, and then not actually using it. So I do get trapped in that loop sometimes. What other
And
things
it's
have you?
comfortable, right?
It is. It's fun.
Yeah,
What
it's
other
fun. I like
things
to
have
learn.
you failed at in your writing career specifically?
You
Let's
bring
not
this
get
up like
personal.
5 to 10 minutes before the end rather than 5 to 10 minutes in. Um, well, here's the biggest failure I've ever made. And it circles back to the beginning of our conversation where you said, hey, it's been a year since you've been on the podcast. It's like, I went into this author life probably, when did we meet? Probably 10 years ago, 10 or 12 years ago. It's been a long time.
Yeah. It's been more than 10 years.
Yeah, it's been more than 10 years.
Mhm.
You were one of the few people that I made friends with and felt like, all right, this is a connection I have in the author community. There was a point in time where I just felt like all of this connection and community building, I don't need it. I'm above it. And God, saying that out loud just makes my skin crawl because it's so wrong. And where I got that idea from, I don't know. But I came to that realization probably 8 or 9 years ago, where I've thought, like, I saw all the people that I first attended conferences with. Ben Gorman, who everybody in the Portland writing community knows. Like, I met him when he was just pitching a novel, and within 2 or 3 years, he was running Not a Pipe Press. And I thought, well, what's the difference here? Like, why is he taking these steps? And I recognized, because he was just making friends those first conference, and he kept those friends, and he was blossoming, growing that friend group. And so that's the biggest failure I mean I could ever attack. I say it all the time when people ask, like, I just never thought I needed the community, and now that's all I want, is just to be a part of one.
My
What about
biggest
you?
failures are diametrically opposed. Because
Whoa.
why wouldn't it be for me? So what I mean by that is, so I really like planning, as you know, but I often don't give the new plan enough time to work, and I jump ship too fast. I'll be like, okay, this is going to be the new schedule, and I'm going to do this and this on these days, and I'm going to accomplish all this stuff, and this is the way it will work. Or this is my new process, I'm going to do it this way. And I'll try it for like 10 days and think, well, that just doesn't work for me. And I'll shift it and make up a new plan.
Right.
And I spend all this time like creating plans, and then don't allow enough time for it to mature and to work or not. So that's one side. But on the other side of that, I also get stuck doing things too long. For instance, one of my writing failures, I would say, is stopping the writing and instead focusing on the nonfiction, or the author services part. Like, I remember designing this like coaching program, and it took me like a year. I hired a business coach, I went through her program, I came up with my own signature program. And it took a long time because I created this awesome service, this awesome product, but that whole year I wasn't writing new words. And then that didn't end up, that was the launch day was supposed to happen like right as we all locked down for COVID. So that kind of fizzled out and didn't work and didn't go anywhere. Or, so things like that, like I'll invest a bunch of time mostly, and money too, on doing this new thing, and it takes me away from the writing. So
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of the opposite of I have both sides of the coin at the same time as failures.
Yeah, and here's something I think what you said made me think, and that is, in this whole process of, if we just want to call it like the author life, I think that's just the, whatever you listener or you viewer want to make that, like whatever that is. I think there's going to be pinch points where failure is abundant. You know, when I first went freelance 10 years ago, like there was a cascade, there was a waterfall of failure right around there, because I would have done it all differently if I could have. Within a month, I knew, like, okay, I would have done it differently. Like my benchmark for leaving would have been different than the one I set out for myself. I just think there's these points, and then you get into a flow. And like right now, I could say like my failures are small, because I'm in a flow. When I choose to do something new, right, I'm going to start this Patreon thing in about 6 weeks. That probably will be met with a few more failures and a few more failures in public. So I think you just have to recognize that there's just different times and different, like, failures more abundant at certain times than at others. But I think the thing to note is the writing itself, you can't look at as, you can start a story you don't finish, but I don't think you can look at that as a failure. I think there's books that are failed, stories that are failed, and I think you can look at them a myriad of ways. But if you look at the energy you put into starting them and writing them and trying to make them work as failure, then you're not going to grow in this, really.
That's so true. You have to fail in order to grow. It's part of the process.
Yeah, and the idea that, like, I think there's a lot of people out there who are not holding themselves to a high writing standard. I'll just say that. I'm not saying there's bad writers. I'm just saying there's people out there who are publishing everything they write and and trying to put it into that. It's okay to have a drawer of books that, like, yeah, this one didn't work. It's great. In fact, I think going back to that old literary standard of having that drawer of dirty little secrets is a good one. Like, just, I've got a novel that, boy, before I die, the instructions are to burn it. Just get rid of it, all evidence of it. It's so embarrassing to me.
I don't
I
have
think you
those
kind of have
on
to have
physical
that.
copies. They're all on like old computer hard drives that don't work anymore. So they'll be lost. Nobody will
If
find
my
them.
child is really, like, mad at me at that time, he might go, bring it out and publish it with my name on it. He wouldn't do that, I hope. But I think you have to have those things. So you just have to, if you can write a novel the first time and nail it, you're a wizard of some kind. Who are you? I don't know
You're
who
a
you are.
wizard, Harry.
You're a wizard. Oh, he just passed away.
He did?
Yeah,
Hagrid?
isn't that Robbie? Yeah, Robbie Coltrane. He died like a couple months ago. Oh
Oh.
no, we're gonna end this on a real bum note. The actor that played Hagrid passed away, like, I think in September. Oh
I
no.
wonder if I saw that and just sort of put it out of my memory. I remember one time my ex-husband went dressed up as Hagrid for Halloween. It was awesome. It was really rad. He had this big cloak and he bought these like platform boots. So he's already 6'5". So then he put the platform boots on. So he was, really tall. And
No,
my
right.
oldest child had a pink umbrella at the time. So he carried that around. Yeah. He was a great Hagrid. That was an awesome Halloween
Such a
costume.
great character.
Yeah.
Hard to read out loud. When you're reading those books out loud to your kids, trying to get into the Hagrid dialogue can be really slow you
Yeah.
down.
It was a dialect that you have to skim and just sort of absorb and know what he's saying.
Half of it, I was just like, I kind of read ahead with my eye and just,
Uh-huh.
like, was winging it. Like, all right, it's in there. That's
Small
just,
failure. I can't do a
yeah.
Hagrid dialect.
Yeah, I can't do Hagrid. Small failure. Just fail better, folks. That's the key, right? Just
Fail
keep
better.
writing it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And it might just be the story. If you want to analyze it, then just be good to yourself. Maybe it's not the execution, the actual writing of it. Maybe the story just wasn't there.
Yeah.
Maybe there wasn't enough.
And this really is a mindset shift for some people. Like it is
Oh yeah.
the fail. If you fail at something, that doesn't mean that you are a failure. It just means
Right.
that didn't work and let's learn from it, which sounds
Right.
contrite, but
I actually I'm doing a beta read for a friend of mine who's a computer programmer, was a computer programmer. And one of the things he said really early on was like, I've always wanted to write a novel because it's kind of the opposite of writing code and things. It's like you get to trial and error it. You get to like, rewrite it and fail it and fail it. It's a whole different process of like even a finished book isn't perfect. You still get things that people don't like, I'm sure in Mexican Gothic, if I love it, there's going to be something in it that I say, I didn't like this part, or you can't be.
Yeah. And I really do like that perfect is the enemy of done. And because I remember I very smartly, I think, you make the book be as perfect as you can make it. And my first book, my first novel, The Scent of Apple Tea, when I went to publish it, I did get some feedback from my writers group saying, it's just not quite there yet. And I feel like the character motivation is not quite there. And I thought, you know what? This is my very first novel. Like, I know I'm going to grow as a writer. And if I try to rework this book again, like it's just going to delay, and maybe I'll make it 5% better, but perfect is the enemy of done. So let's just put it out there. It's my first novel. I'll get better with the next one. And so I was really proud of myself for making that call. Now I just need to keep doing it.
I think if I can put a button on this conversation, is I wish I would have started failing earlier when it comes to the writing side of it.
Like that. I want to put that on a t-shirt. I
really wish I would have. Well, it was my goal when I went freelance. I thought, okay, like I kind of just did the math. I'm making as much sort of moonlighting as a ghostwriter than I was as a caseworker. So I decided, okay, I'll just go work 4 hours a day as a ghostwriter, and then I'd have 4 hours a day to write my stuff. And then I spent 5 years not writing books that I wanted to write because I don't know, because I was maybe afraid of failure, or maybe afraid of defining what I was doing. Yeah. And actually it was my kid who said, like, it's the whole Apple story. I've probably told it a bunch of times. And that was when I thought, like, no, you can't, you're not just doing apples down there. You're not just eating apples. You're actually doing something, and you have to show something for it, because that's the example. You're doing it. What are you doing? You have to just do it in public. If you can't hide it forever.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Well, I feel better.
And then 5 years later, the book's out there for Mary to buy, and here we are. Thanks, Mary.
Oh, well, next week we are going to be talking about, this is timely for me because it is how to decide on your next project.
Oh, I love this topic. Love it.
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts about it.
And I'll have my cake for my 1-year anniversary. My cake will have shown up, and we'll put the one candle in it.
Yes. If you want to wish Eric a happy anniversary, leave us a message and we'll read it out on the podcast.
Please do.
All right. So next episode, how to decide on your next project. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for talking next week.
With me. Happy writing, everybody.
Happy writing. Happy failing.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.